All right, let's talk about the different ways of investing in real estate. Here in Los Angeles, let's get started. Hello everyone, Rick Albert here with America Real Estate. For those that don't know who I am a real estate agent, right? So I help clients buying and selling and investing, but I'm also an investor myself. I'm a two-time house hacker, as well as had long-term rentals and even have rentals out of state. So today we're going to talk about some of the different ways that you can invest in real estate and some of the pros and cons here in Los Angeles. So the first one is the typical one, right? That's the long-term rentals, more than 30 days. This is what's very common. Most of my clients, this is what they've been doing. Why? Because in some ways it could be easier, right? So you have one tenant in for 12 months, call it a day. It's much also easier to self-manage if you needed to. But of course, some of the cons are you are dealing with Los Angeles rent control, even statewide rent control, depending on where you're investing. So those are some things you kind of have to navigate through. Now, for a lot of the investors in 2023 that I worked with, either I represented or if I had listings and the buyers that came in, some are paying cash, some leveraged another property through a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance. Others put large amount down to make those numbers work, because it sometimes can be tricky given the higher prices here in LA. But we've had buyers buy even from condos to single family. Like they're making the numbers work. The second one is midterm rentals. This one's kind of interesting because it's, you're not necessarily renting for a week, but you are renting for, let's say, 30 days. So these could be traveling nurses. It could be people coming in like studio execs. I have a client that's doing it near Culver City. And what he saw was he had a lot of older people coming in to visit family. So they would stay in his second unit. He was a house hacker. They're staying in his 1-bedroom second unit for a month at a time, 2 months at a time, visiting family. Or he would get a lot of working professionals from the East Coast, like attorneys, things like that, who might want to come and enjoy the better weather. So for him, the way the numbers kind of worked after all the fees from Airbnb, because you can post monthly there, it came out to about what he would rent long term. The difference is he has a little bit more flexibility. He's not necessarily dealing with the rent control laws. But more importantly, if he ever wanted to use that unit, so for example, family came into town, whatever, he'd have access to it because he can kind of plan accordingly. So midterm is gaining some popularity. And you do have to think about furnishing, right? So you have to furnish it. Usually utilities are included. So depending on the structure, also you have to factor in some condo complexes may not be a fan of it. So this is more geared towards, house hacking, multifamily, things like that. Of course, then you have the popular short-term rentals. That's the Airbnbs, VRBO, that's basically vacation. In the city of Los Angeles, there's a ton of restrictions against this. So it has to be owner occupied for at least 6 months out of the year. You can only do it for a max of 120 days out of the year. Sometimes you can get extensions, but for the most part, LA is really tough with short-term rentals. Most of my clients aren't doing it. Those that I know that are doing short-term rentals, it's typically outside of Los Angeles, even sometimes out of state that they're doing these short term. So it's not necessarily the most popular here by virtue of the laws. And even if you are interested in doing it in an area where it's like, hey, look, I found a loophole because the laws are okay with it. Always assume that the market's going to change and that the laws are going to change. So you need a backup plan. We're seeing a lot of what was once Airbnb hosts now somewhat screwed because they bought their properties with this expectation of this high revenue that they're no longer getting. So these are things you have to factor in versus the long-term rentals, which is much more traditional, midterm, which is kind of in between. Then of course you do have house hacking. It's one of my personal favorites, because I'm a house hacker myself. You can put less money down, you can get a better interest rate, and you need a place to live anyway. So even if you weren't necessarily cash flowing, it's still better than the alternative, which would be renting. And later on, as appreciation catches up, as opportunities arise for refinances, whatever the case may be, you can start creating that cash flow over the long run. When I first bought my first house hack, the condo, and even my second house hack, the house where I built out the ADU, I was about breaking even should I move out. Now, I was cash flowing on the condo, which I've now sold, and on my house, if I moved out, I would be cash flowing positive. So it just takes time here in Los Angeles. And I know the rule is never to bank on appreciation, but it is Los Angeles. It's something that we're known for. And so you just need to factor that in when you look at your real estate investing goals. Of course, then the last type of investing that's somewhat popular is flipping, right? That's when you buy a house undervalued because you're going to add value, fixing it up, doing additions, whatever, and then putting it back on the market. I will say in 2023, I have been bombarded with investors trying to find flip opportunities, like bombarded weekly. They've been coming out of the woodwork because they're desperate to find properties. Now, this one's really challenging because of two reasons. One, there was high competition. In 2021, a little bit of 2022, we saw what I like to call the HGTV buyers. Those are the buyers who like to go in and want to renovate themselves. But because of that, because it was their primary residence, they can pay more than what a flipper could, right? What an investor could. So there's a lot of competition there. I do expect that to slow down because cost of construction, which is the second part, has gone up. A lot of people have spent a lot of their savings, with inflation, student loans, everything else. And a lot of people actually don't even have the time. I'm seeing a lot of that actually as well. So flippers may have an opportunity going into 2024 on finding some better deals. They're just harder to come by. The margins are really tight. So you have to think about ways to add value. You can do an addition, but ideally you would do an addition where you're adding a bedroom. So you get double benefits, right? You get the benefit of adding square footage and you got the benefit of adding a bedroom. It's almost like double dipping. So these are some of the basic ways that people are investing in real estate here in Los Angeles. I'd love to hear what you're doing, what you like to do, short-term and long-term, because we're all in this together. If you need advice or want to strategize for a strategic consultation, feel free to DM me. Love to have the conversation, and you guys have a great rest of your week.